Fuzzy Gloves here, and today I'm going to walk you through some orchestral music I made rather quickly for a project my brother was doing. So called me up and said, hey, I want to make some orchestral music, and this is what I came up with. He was going to do some talking over it, so we had to mix it again at the end, but I generally will write the music separate and then I'll do a custom mix after for whatever we need to do with it. So here is the finished track. It's about a minute long. Yeah, so that's it. Not bad. How long did this take me to do? About an hour and 3 minutes. So not bad at all for an hour and 3 minutes. It's pretty quick. I gave it a brief master and all that stuff. When I'm writing this sort of music, a lot of the times the mixing stuff will happen while I'm making it. I did go ahead and do a couple things. This is pretty much all contact. I think I did most of the mixing actually inside of the instance of contact. So these are the instruments I used. So how do you pound something out that fast, right? How do you get something that sounds reasonable? And there's not like a terribly large amount of things. And I'm rather proud that I am now using more and more of the instruments I actually make. So the Gloves music box, that was the thing at the end combined. So this one, it's $5. There's a bundle with the Gloves bell tree, but also the Gloves Glock, which is free. So this is a free one. The noise floor is a little higher than I would like it to be on this one, but it is fine for those quieter elements, which is sort of what it was made for. So it works out quite nicely, and it's got some like basic controls. I did adjust the spread and panning on a couple of these things, and I had to create a second instance of the piano for those deep low notes during the impact part right here. But other than that, it worked out great for exactly what we wanted it to be. So okay, let's talk about general form. How do you make something like this pretty quickly? Well, I knew I needed something that had like a rather simple melody, something that wasn't too over the top complex. And so I needed just a general chord structure. So the first thing I did was I made this this sort of pulsing line, and everything sort of revolves around this line. I changed it like once. And there's a particular voicing I was interested in when I made this that I've been messing more and more with on the piano, and it's just a beautiful voicing. But first I came up with my structure. So I knew I wanted to hint at the chords at the beginning, and then during the main part I would, open up the chords and reveal all the harmonies and stuff. It's a pretty basic structure. It's an 8th note pulse, which is perfect for this sort of a thing. I brought the tempo down to like 104, and so it's like dun, 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 that whole deal. And so I'm moving around in C minor because I know C minor really well. I'm familiar with the textures I can get out of it. So for example, in C minor, some really nice chords to work with are, of course, the 1 chord. And then if you go to the 6, it sounds really nice as well, which actually is a major chord in minor, so that works out. And then I went back because in this sort of a thing, it just works out nicely. I go over here. The thing that I think is pretty cool is when I move to the major 4 here, and it's going from the F to the C, which is actually a 5th. So I could get into like exactly like how all this stuff works and the implications of choosing these voicings, but in reality, I just knew it sounded nice. So that's what I went for. So this particular moment, that's just something that you wouldn't, it's a novel thing to happen right there. Instead of going back to, I don't know, of all the moves you can make, this is a rather nice one because it's not completely expected, especially considering this is the next part of a whole separate phrase. So it's sort of like a signaled motion. So I knew this would allow me to reuse this structure a couple times in the short span and it not becoming overly repetitive. So we talk back and forth here. And it's interesting because I sort of reveal that it's a minor chord here, but over here it's like, oh, is it? Like, it's kind of like an open thing. So then I fill in at the beginning, I fill it in also with some long strings. So that's the basic idea. I've got this structure. Now, after you have a basic harmonic structure, I called it development. It's not really a development, but I introduce a theme. So here's a theme, and it's a piano. If we were to just solo the piano, solo. This is my melody. Okay, so I vary this a little bit throughout, but this is the general idea. And it's interesting because it's octaves, and then I break into some harmonies. Octaves over here, harmonies over here. And this F with a voice on top is just super nice. Now this is actually the fifth, so but the one I've been interested in recently has really been when you have a tonic and then you have a third on top. So the third's an octave away, and then it's just those two notes. For example, if I was playing C, the typical third would be E. But if I play the E on top, I don't know, something about that particular voicing is just really nice. If you were to do it in like the minor, so we'd play an A, and my bad, the third is the E. Yeah, so A, the third would be the C, so you play the C on top. And then let's say we went to F, so the third would be an A. And then we could just go up, we could do the typical thing. It's just got this, this nice nostalgic kind of feel to it. So it's really powerful voicing. I haven't gotten to the point in my harmony series where I'm talking about that in particular, but this is my theme. And then all you have to do the rest of the time is embellish these chords in that theme. And so here's like sort of I'm building up, and then here's it in its full glory. So we go from the strings here, and what I do after that is I bring in, we've got the drums, got to have the inspirational drums going. And the drums just serve to metrically reinforce They just serve to reinforce the motion, the meter that we have here. So we have a meter going. This is helping them sort of feel the meter, feel what we have. And so the dynamics also give a large cue as to the feeling. So you notice right here we have this phrase that sort of ascends in dynamics. So that like gives a cue like, oh, something's gonna happen, and something definitely happens next. So that's just some simple melodic writing with percussive elements. Well, not melodic, rhythmic writing with percussive elements. So we have just to give you the feel for the transition. So I'm like gonna give the listener a cue. I'm gonna enrich it with the melody. I am going to, and then I keep the other two parts the same and just add in the drums. And so it's a pretty simple transition, but pretty cool. So right here, you can tell something's going on, but I give an extra cue. I really like doing this. I add in a sub bass, and the sub bass simply just drops right there. So it goes boom. Now you see it's almost all there. So once we're here, you notice with these four elements though, we don't get quite the full feel. I do a couple things though. This is basically kind of like the drop, I guess you could call it. So I fill in our melody with a little more, I get a little more complicated. I also change our melody right here. It's a little more interesting. So that to me, that's just such a cool thing to do harmonically. But so we notice here, we've got our drums. I also fill in before it was just those two lines, but now I'm doing this sort of a deal. And our velocities are a little more intense. They just are generally louder. So, and I also fill in our harmonies here, somewhat. There we go. I didn't want to put down a note. And I also add in a bass that matches our low end. So on our piano, I have added this like deep. Oh, the piano, I forgot. I separated it later because for mixing purposes. So if only you could do that in real life, but you can't. But I can because this is not real. So you notice we've got pretty strong stuff going on here. So, but it's not quite full. It doesn't feel like it's all there. So, we got to put our drums back in. Can't take the drums out. And then I also add in this horn line, doubling the melody on notes that I thought were significant. It doesn't necessarily completely follow the melody, and it is legato. So the notes overlap. That just gives reinforcement to my awesome melodic line, because that's the most important part. And then the piano serves to just outline, we're definitely making beat one the most important with the piano. And I'm also giving you some like, hey, these are the most important notes of the chords, guiding you through our awesome part here. Now, if you're not used to listening to this sort of stuff, it may be kind of difficult to tell where the horn is. And that's because the horn blends really well with the other stuff that's going on, especially the strings. Strings and horns have very similar harmonic textures. So if I get rid of this bass and the drums and we just focus on just the horns melding, you'll hear it a little bit easier. So it's just a textural move. If I were to just solo the horns. So you see, they're not like a big thing. Some people always try to make their horns sound huge, and that's not bad. But in this case, it's just a really nice thing that fills up what's going on. It's not necessarily a super forward thing. And then also I add these in. I'll do them in isolation for you with the horn solo. And these are just little riffs. And I thought it'd be cool to have these like clarinets and flutes go boop, 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 like whoa, and then fade away and do something small. They can't go away because that's kind of weird. And then I do these little rises and I go back to doing this sort of thing and accenting elements that I thought were important. So with those, so you see just little things like that. And you also notice it's out of the range of some of the flutes, but it doesn't really matter because of the role they're playing. Like that note doesn't exist. These are that. So there's one note, and I was thinking, do I want to move this around or move this? And I said, nah, I'm just not going to have a note there. So when we put it all together, it all fits very nicely. I was thinking about ending right there, but the problem is his video continues. So I need another part. So I thought, I'll recap it. It's sort of this nostalgic thing. We've just experienced the peak of this piece. We've had an experience with something large and magnificent. So now we need to sort of think about it. After you have a big adventure, there's those moments at home where you're like, man, that was incredible. So I do that here, and bells are like my favorite things to do this with. So They're just intimate, and they sort of have this feeling of like reminiscence to them. When you listen to a pure tone of a bell, it just makes you, I don't know, there's just like this thinking back quality that they tend to evoke. So part of it's because of the high end content. When people are whispering or talking in our ears, or they're very close, you will have a lot more high end content. So bells actually tend to do it that way. So I keep the strings because this has been our sort of our guide through this piece. So I bring them back down though; they're much softer. And here's the bells. So you can hear the Glock pretty obviously. The Glock is like right there. I am like so proud of this instrument just because it's like really usable. I'm like, yes, mission accomplished with this. Anyways, it's going up and down. There's a couple notes that are a little bright, so compressor or just turn the note down or whatever. But some you may not hear as obviously because this thing's sort of just outlining our chords and giving space to breathe as we. So this is like this moment right here and right here is just thought time. It's moments for you to think about, what has just happened. And then we have this, let's turn these off. This may be less apparent. This is the music box, but I changed the envelope on it and a couple other things to get this nice tone. So it's just nice. And when you combine it with the other bell, and I recorded the Glock in stereo. So it's kind of cool because the Glock sort of moves around as with the notes. And so you get natural stereo motion. From far away, it wouldn't be this intense, but you could always use a stereo spread or something. And I included controls for that anyways. And then, they just keep the strings in and all that together. That's how I made this track. Very quick track. Very cool. Just a lot of embellishments, some smart use of harmonic structure, interesting chord progression, and just a nice melody. The rest of it is just sort of mixing and picking your sounds. So I just know these sounds well, and some of them I made, so I know those especially well. On the strings, I made them a little wider than normal. Stereo width I brought up because I wanted things like the piano to be very loud, and the piano was originally part of this piano was originally part of the other piano, those low tones, and it only comes in for that. That's its only job, and that's because they were extremely to the left. Because if you're playing the piano, the low ones are going to be on your left, but the problem is in the role they were playing, that was way too far over. And so I had to clone it and move it over. They have some controls in here. The XXL option and some other things are really interesting and helpful for mixing. It really helps bring them out. But they have some options here for the way it deals with the keys. I'm not going to do a whole tutorial on the Giant, but they've got some cool choices in here for stuff like that. So yeah, there's two of them. Tried to match them as best I could so that it still sounded like part of the same thing. But you see we have some low end control. And then I just messed with the panning inside here. A lot of these things have been recorded in such a way that they've already got excellent miking, but they're recorded in different spaces. So you have to, sort of figure things out. And I'm not using them all in the context that they are intended to be used in. But yeah. Pretty cool. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.